Hello everyone, my name is Yechiel Spero, and welcome to Tehillim Treasures. In Hashem, we plan on going through the entire Sefer Tehillim, doing 2 prakim every week. For instance, this week we'll do Parakala and Parak. And before we get started, I want to give especially Ashrae special thanks to Chazaq. Chazaq is an organization that spreads Torah in unimaginable ways. Over the last 2 years, ever since COVID hit this world, we've been looking for ways to become more inspired and accessible ways to do so, and Chazaq has provided us with endless content. They should continue to have siyata d'shmaya and divine providence to do so. Additionally, we want to thank you for helping to support, if you can, Chickens for Shabbos. Chickens for Shabbos is an incredible organization providing chickens and more for melamdim, for teachers, for agunas, for women who find themselves alone, and of course for grushas, for women who are divorced, people that are in need. And Chickens for Shabbos does exceptional work. Your money will go to wonderful places. Please support us at chickensforshabbos.com. We begin with Parakala. And Parakala, I'm using Tehillim. We're going to try to do the following. Take an idea, take a concept from the Parak, and elaborate on it a little bit. And in this way, we'll be able to do the Parak and give it a little bit of flavor. The Parak speaks for itself. David HaMelech knew what he was doing, and so did the others who composed these magnificent, timeless treasures. But we'll take one idea, one concept, give the Parak a little bit of flavor, and hopefully we'll be able to come to a greater appreciation of each kapitel of Tehillim. David HaMelech begins, Ashrae ish asher leholach b'tzas rishoyim. Praiseworthy is the individual who does not go in the path of rishoyim. And this is an introduction to Tehillim. David HaMelech knew what he was doing, and he began with Ashrae, and he ends really the second parak, which is a continuation of the first, with the words Ashrae kol choisevoi, praiseworthy are those who trust in him. And the Gemara in Brachas tells us, kol parsha Shahoisa Chaviva al David, any parsha, any chapter that was dear to David HaMelech, Pasach ba ba'Ashrae, V'sayim ba ba'Ashrae. He opened it with Ashrae and he closes it with Ashrae. David HaMelech was aware of all of the future trials and tribulations that Klal Yisrael would have. He knew that Klal Yisrael would suffer. He knew that there would be those parents who needed help with their children. He knew that there's going to be people that suffer with their health. He knew that people are going to be looking for shidduchim. He knew that there are going to be people that are desperate for parnasa. David HaMelech knew it all. And he knew that Tehillim would be a comforting companion to each and every Yid during their most difficult times. You go around hospital rooms and hospital waiting rooms, and you see a Yid there, you know for sure they will have one thing. They will have a Tehillim. If we could peek into a parent's house when they're waiting for their child who's struggling to come back home, never knowing when he's going to walk through that door, we would find them with a Tehillim at their side. If we saw perhaps a father or mother trying to balance a checkbook and it wasn't working out, we'd know one thing. We'd know that at the last moments before they went to sleep, they would try, if they had koyach, to say a kapitel Tehillim. Tehillim is our trustworthy friend. But David HaMelech tells us one idea in this chapter that we must be able to make a part of our lives. The pasuk says, Ki'im b'soiras Hashem cheftzoi u'v'soirasoi yehegeh yomam b'loila. But his desire is in the Torah of Hashem, and in his Torah he meditates day and night. Rav Gifter once said, Torah is the solution to all the ills of our society. David HaMelech says, if you want to make sure that you're helped out, yes, Tehillim will be your companion, but Torah needs to be the central and focus point of your life. if you dedicate your life to Torah, if you make sure that Torah is there for you, or you're supporting Torah, then all of your ills, all of your difficulties will be solved. There's a Maisa, there's a story. A number of years ago, probably, I don't know, could be it was about 70, 80, 90 years ago, there were maskilim, enlightened Jews, who would go to the best yeshivas and they would try to pull out the bachrim, and they would try to get them to get into a vikuach, get into an argument with them. And one time they came to yeshiva and they started to contest the boys. They tried to challenge them, asking them questions about religion, telling them to see the light and to get their heads out of their books and to see the real world. There was one bacher who refused to go out. All the bachrim went out. They said, "What are you talking about? Milchemes Hashem, a battle for Hashem. We have to do everything we can to fight off these terrible people." One bacher didn't. His name was Avremel. And he sat in the Beis Medrash and learned, and when he came back, they took him to task and they said, "Where's your kavod Torah? Where's your honor for Torah? People are coming and they're attacking Torah and you're not responding. Instead, you sit in the Beis Medrash." And he told them, "Listen, I just want to sit and learn. And that's what we have to do." Well, that Bacher Avremel became Rabbi Avram Yeshaya Karelitz the Chazanish. What became of those who fought against those who were challenging Torah? Unfortunately, some of them got pulled into the fight, got pulled into the conversation, and they themselves became maskilim. There's a lot of difficulty in the world. There's a lot of things that we have to put our minds to. There's a lot of ideas we need to contest and fight. But most importantly, stay true to Torah. Learn the Torah. Embrace the Torah. Support the Torah. And when you do, all of your difficulties in Yitzhak Hashem will disappear. So now we come to the second parak of Tehillim. And in this parak, we're going to talk about bitachon. You'll see very often that there are themes that recur over and over in Sefer Tehillim. David's reinforcing the message many, many times. And David HaMelech begins, Lama ragshu goyim uleumim yagurik. Why do the goyim start up with us? Why do they persecute us? Don't you get it? And in Pasuk Zayin it says, Beni ato ani hayoim yiliticha. You are my son, I've begotten you on this day. Why are you starting up with the king's favorite child? We have protectia. You know, sometimes you see that there's certain kids that can get away with things in school or in camp. And you wonder, why are they getting away with things? Oh, that's the principal's son. Or that's the head counselor's son. Well, guess what? That's who we are. And therefore, HaKadosh Baruch Hu loves us more and cares about us more. And therefore, when the Goyim start up with us, just as if somebody would start up with the head counselor's kid, or somebody would start up with the principal's kid, or somebody would start up with the boss's kid. Imagine you have a business, and the boss is demanding everything from every employee. And there's one employee who comes late, and the boss seems to welcome him into his office, sits down and has coffee with him. What's going on? He's the boss's kid. Don't start up with him. You're asking for trouble. That's what the nations of the world are asking for when they bother the Jewish people, but they don't get it. And all of their intentions will be reek, will be empty, will be in vain. David HaMelech says that you better watch out, nations of the world. David HaMelech is the Ne'im Zemiros Yisrael. He's the composer of all the compositions and all the songs for Klal Yisrael. And David HaMelech knows that no matter what goes on, no matter how many difficulties we have, the response to those difficulties needs to be through song. Yes, the nations of the world might bother us and we cry out to Hashem, but how do we cry out? Always in song. Because we know that Hashem loves us very much. Hashem would never do anything to hurt us. There's two important ideas that if a person incorporates these into his daily life, he will have a wonderful existence. Number one, Hashem is the only being that can make anything happen in this world. Nothing happens without Hashem signing off on it. That's number one. Number two, Hashem would never, ever, ever do anything to hurt his children. So think about it. When you're going through something, Hashem signed off on it. And number two, he's never doing anything that's going to hurt you. You can let go now. The Degel Machne Ephraim says the Gewaldige Mashal. And he says that a person needs to know that as the child of the king, we'll be able to always find our way back home. And he gives a mashal, he gives a parable. And he says once upon a time there was a king who wanted to test his constituents' loyalty. And so he sent them off many, many miles away from the kingdom. And he made it difficult for them to come back. He unleashed many, many wild animals. And that turned away some people from trying to make their way back to the king's palace. But the loyal ones continued to push forward. And then there was a group of men who were hiding behind trees, the bandits, who tried to scare them and beat them up. And again, many turned away, but the loyalists remained. And then as they drew closer to the kingdom, the king tried a third approach. And he laid out wonderful, beautiful delicacies and tremendous amusement for them to try to distract them. And many got caught up in it, but the loyal ones pushed through. And at the end, one person pushed through, the child of the king. And he says, how'd you do it, my son? How did you not be afraid from the wild animals? How were you able to push past the bandits? How were you able to ignore all of the luxuries and the distractions? And he said, that's because I love you, Daddy, and I wanted to be with you more than anyone else. If only the nations of the world knew that we're most loyal to Hashem, they would never start up with us. Because if they did, they would understand what the consequences would be. We are Hashem's child. We have protectia, and he will never, ever abandon us. Thank you.